Yo! So you guys were just on with bats. I'm not going to keep this too long. But I do want to handle any questions that anybody has while everybody stumbles in. Unless they've already run away with their profits for the weekend, which is amazing. How'd you guys end up today? No trades, okay. Green, cool. How did we find the flow? We this morning's analysis seemed to be pretty spot on. So what we found was a few things. If we get into it, many reasons why I didn't expect the cataclysm before anything happened, right? I didn't like this as a high. We've been talking about that all week. Today ended up being actually the cleanest. We swept underneath here after sweeping here. That was a violent move, trapping all the shorts, and we just ran their faces off today. Whether we continue lower or not, the expectation was taking this high. It'll be interesting to see where we open next week. So coming in, we basically started here, and our last idea of where possible shorts could come in was the midpoint of this zone we just left from at 481, which we actually coincidentally traded back down to. Is that random? That there was an imbalance formed there? No, it's not. Should this imbalance hold into early next week, we expect to actually trade above here. Ideally, this candle would have closed underneath here. And it certainly had the fuel to do so as she ran down. So we opened this morning after yesterday, consolidation, defended well, accumulation, manipulation, bang, traded back in to this area of interest. Found a double bottom in here, leading to a beautiful overnight and early morning London push. Right? So we broke above this structural high here. The area that was responsible was this. We tapped back into it once. That put in a new high. Cool. We then traded back down, attempted to trade back into it again. Couldn't even do that, and we woke up this morning after a brief consolidation and a rocket ship. And it was a rocket ship. Your early signs of this at open, you've got this consolidation. We sweep the liquidity here. I think it actually double bottomed. Triple bottomed, actually, which I think got taken later on. And then your early candle was just, boom, let's go. Let's go, let's go. So even if you're locked out of this, some people leapt in, and that's their system, the understanding of what sort of danger the shorts were in if this really got going, because we're targeting that daily high above 680, which it did. So if we were going to make that a reality, this is pretty much how we do it. And they went long and they held. They held unless a valid high or something got put in structurally. What did we get? We got this. Is that enough? Definitely not. We then went sideways in here, which is important. We'll get to that later. And that yielded another rocket ship. Sideways, no valid high yet. All the way up, and then almost immediately took that daily high. And then what did we get? Lethargic. Leading to a double bottom here, breaking that high. And our expectation, given that this was a crappy 15-minute high, was the same sort of thing. We had this movement down. We kind of chopped around in here before breaking that low. That movement up, failing here at the prior zone, led to a higher time frame second distribution move that broke this. Now by broke, I mean it didn't close underneath it. But given the higher time frame direction and the lethargic movement back up, we're now looking at this as a break of structure. You also have to take into account that this whereabouts this is failing, which is right underneath or right at a higher time frame high. Now, we expect to range after we take a daily high. And we certainly saw a lot of that price action. Lethargic movement in, spike out, right back into the range. Trading the extremes, back into the range. Lethargic movement up, crack, lethargic movement up. Now, what do we kind of want to see? If we're paraphrasing, and we remove everything for a sec, you've got high, low, high, broken, trades back in, leaves. Right? What do we have on our lower time frames? A high, a low, a high, broken, trades back in, leaves. You have a more predominant one in here. A high, a low, a high, lethargic price action where the SNDR that broke this area of interest. We've liquidated this high. This was a valid short, even if it didn't give a proper trigger. This is what we're looking for. Nothing that I took, but I would have shorted in here had I got a proper reaction. Instead, we got this low, put in this high. It got broken. It then traded back in. Consolidation, swept, failed. Cool. Right? This is this on a lower time frame. Broke this low, traded back in, left. And I think people got chopped up in here looking for longs, risking off of this manipulation without taking into account what price is doing in here over this 45 minutes. How many bars does it take to leave a zone? 3 to 4. So this 15-minute PA took 3 bars and then left. And you could tell when it left because it made this consolidation, breaking out of this range, and then tapped back into it, left. And it actually did that twice in here. After leaving this, which is very clean because now we're expecting that trade back in, and it did that. And in this trade back in, you've got lethargic price action, leading to a higher time frame move. Right into our pocket, drawn from the low of the SNDR to the high. You could argue from here. Either way, we were waiting for that all morning on stream. So what I wanted to see, ideally, this move, getting involved, I need to see buying come in first. We then run them out, and then we go. As soon as we get a body closure above our last structural bearish candle here, we can now expect this to be manipulation, confirmed. And now we're looking for that trade back in, which actually occurred here, giving you a second conservative entry, right? And then what ended up happening was that left. Now, this moved lethargically up, which I wasn't terribly happy with. So I traded this, and I took my position off here. Mainly because we built a swing here. We then built another swing here, and we had a third swing in here. There's probably a viable area of getting involved in this when this couldn't drop down. But the possibility of us tapping back in and then going down was fueled by this being a lethargic movement up. We ended up building an SNDR. You could argue it was this here, but that high was actually above this one, so I kind of like this area. Broke this high, trading back into the origin of this. Traded back down. You got a scalp out of the SNDR if you're quick, right? But then we started ranging in here. And more importantly, this needed to break structure. Instead, we had this shove, traded back in. Failed again above this candle. And then it finally snapped here. Chopped around in here. And then left. Right? So, not what we wanted to see after breaking this protected high. You got our trade back in. We're still okay until we start having bearish signatures in here. We didn't sweep. If we would have swept here and then left, that would have been viable for me. Instead, we're failing higher. And then as soon as we failed lower, we were pinned. Pinned within this candle's range. Attempted quite a few times to trade higher. Right? Traded higher, traded lower, traded higher. Failing above when the ball's in the bear's court. And then we left. And yet another few trades were set up as well. Even if you didn't catch any of this short. You've got your pocket of your actual range. Right? If we drew it from this. That would have been a viable, what was that? 20 points, 30 points in here. Cool. But the significance of this area from the short side is actually quite prevalent as well. And you guys might not like the trade back in to go short, but you certainly have to respect the SNDR that breaks SNDR. You got your first trade back into the zone. That left quite strongly. That's what we were looking at in here. Right? And then that trade back into the midpoint of it that then left for what? A 100-point move? Lethargically trading back down. This area was already liquidated in here, and now you're looking at trading back into the zone, probably this SNDR that was responsible for breaking these highs over there. You also had a bit of a bottoming pattern that occurred as well. Sharp manipulation leg, lethargic PA. Even if you're not into the bottom, you got your change in order flow. You traded back in, left, traded back into that area, and then left again. Today was one of the more clean price action days in terms of whereabouts it was delivering to and the reactions that came from it. And I know there was some of you guys on stream that destroyed it in here. Right? And even if this ends up failing, and we can tell the reasons that it's failing, right? Namely around the SNDR and structure, then our narrative changes, right? We're bullish, 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 trades back in, still bullish, okay. Right? Not liking the lethargic movement, fair enough. But you have to change your narrative and pivot in here. Does anybody have any sort of questions or whatnot? I know you guys have been at the charts probably a lot today, and I'll post this recording almost instantly as well. Cool. Did you guys end up green today? Hopefully green on the week. Oh, okay. Um, Looking for sweep longs, or what ended up happening? You're probably okay in all of this taking sweep longs. In here, you probably got chopped up a little bit. I think you grabbed, didn't you grab this in the morning? And then I guess this down move was violent. And the only console I have from this is we're essentially looking at the reaction of this daily high, and we want to know, is the bullish movement from a higher time frame similar to this, or like I wanted this high taken. That was actually my expectation from this long. The only reason I changed that is because we were creating swings here. So at worst, or at best I should say, this was probably going to revisit here. I actually thought it was going to do that in here, and then if we found strength, that would have been the move that I was predicting would end up breaking this high. Instead, this ended up trading all the way up there, breaking structure. And then that movement back into here, great, but that failure, that's really rough. That's really rough. This to me was the area, with the possibility of this as well, I suppose. But as soon as we build this SNDR, until this SNDR here breaks, even with this being bearish, I'm still looking at it as you kind of got failure here, you got failure there. You're kind of expecting something like that. That actually looks horrific, right? You've kind of got this, right? So taps back in, leaves, cool. Taps back in, leaves. You know, you're kind of expecting tap back in, maybe leaves again. Lethargically moving down. And instead we built an SNDR here and then just went a rocket ship lower. So this is kind of the predominant SNDR that you're looking at in terms of everything's a scalp until that happens. And I mean, that's nasty. Kind of traded up, failed to make it a valid low. So scalp over. Traded down. This actually did trade and close above this high. So that's rough. Right? Usually you get failure like this. And that's just because we're looking at this being higher time frame. But if you want to give me a shout with any questions or anything off stream, please do, bro. Oh, that's a beautiful idea. That's a beautiful idea. Was that in here? That was in here, wasn't it? What time frame is that chart on? Well, it is on the 1 minute. So what happened in here was that candle was beautiful. I think that actually swept into our pocket as well. But what I want to see is come on. Even if we draw it from there. Right? So it tapped into our pocket. What I want to see is I want to see this movement is usually your initial longs. So usually you get this movement and then we sweep them out. And this is actually doing that on a higher time or intermediate time frame as well. I think the 15-minute ended up with something like that. Not quite on the 15, but we certainly swept these guys out. So what I look for is I look for that initial buying. I think I said this on stream too. And what this does is it mitigates this imbalance now, where you're kind of expecting if this imbalance fails, then you're looking at this low getting taken. So it kind of achieves both objectives, where it sweeps out everybody early long, and it mitigates this imbalance so that if we return to it, we fly. That's why I entered here at 607 or 608, one of the two. In general, I kind of look for the midpoint here, but that's kind of dependent on how violently the sweep occurs, right? This swept, and I was actually in on this candle, didn't get my manipulation, right? I need a body closure above this. So we actually got another candle down. If I had put my stop underneath this one here when I entered, then that would have taken me out. Right, so now we got our body closure here. So now my stop goes here. We got our change in order flow. I'm looking for the movement to trade down. We got that here. Typically that'll happen on these candles. You'll get that. So I was a little surprised that this went up and then came back down so harshly, especially with this closing underneath this candle. But I trusted the narrative on what it had to do. But with the idea that I had of trading above this high, having swings form, I wasn't wild about, which is why I took it off so early in here. Yeah, that one was tough because you got the closure above here. And you're probably looking like, okay, it's going to trade back in, and then I'm looking for a movement back into the zone or this SMDR, which I think is viable. Hey, 4C. Right? And the only thing I have with that is this is where your 1 minute sometimes provides false signals, even when it's giving us clear sweep, beautiful trigger, aggressive confirmation entry to trade up higher, and just falls flat on its face. That's a frustrating one. That's a frustrating one. And I'm sure like on a 5-minute time frame or something, it'll make us look silly, but I can completely understand where you're coming from with that trade. Completely. Right? And even then, the failure above that candle there, that's a bit of a nuance, of course, but trades back down, strong failure. This is just a case of getting shook out on the 1 minute time frame. Not a lot to say about that other than I can definitely see what you're looking at in terms of this, right? And then trading back into here with a 50 or 60 point move, right? Not to mention you're expecting to trade back into this zone, right? You got your bounce from here. Yep, can completely see the idea, and I find no fault in it other than just being the higher time frame move. But even then, if you see something conclusive, you take your shot, and if you're wrong, you're wrong, right? And that one's rough, but just a little bit early on that. But I mean, as we've seen, pretty much the majority of the week, those trades end up working out nicely. These trades end up working out okay. That's rough. We'll do some live executions next week as well with some scalps and what I kind of look for, and I'll show you guys how I manage the inevitable losses that come, but also how to let the winners go, or when we're in trouble, etc., etc. In general, I look for a third push down, so that failure would have been a beautiful long. And then as soon as we get a change in order flow here, I'm either looking for shorts or internal structure longs for the first and second tap. Yeah, you're killing it lately, man. I mean, what do you say? I call you Mr. Payout. Mr. Payout. Anybody have any questions or anything about this stuff? Or should we run away for the weekend and then get some back testing in this weekend? Cool. I see Ty's talking. I see Burr in here as well. Hopefully Burr had a good day. I saw him in this trade with us today, and he even hopped back in here, I think, and crushed this movement. Yeah, hopefully that helped last night too, Ty. But yeah, I'll stop this recording here, and